And we're live.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, our dear participants. We are welcome again to the PDF Bridge Export Capacity Building series, and today will be the second in the series. A fortnight ago, we had market entry strategies with Mr. Collins. Today, we will be talking about export documentation. And we have with us Mr. Kola Awe, the Managing Director of XPT Export. And I'll give his profile very briefly and I'll hand over to him right after that. Mr. Kola Awe is a legal practitioner of repute who has over time diversified into other fields of endeavors. He's an exporter of over 20 years, with export experience cutting across the agro and manufacturing sectors. He has handled freight forwarding and haulage transactions in West and Central Africa for multinationals, governmental and quasi-governmental clients across Nigeria and the West Africa region. His company maintains offices in Ghana and Liberia to support his logistics and market penetration strategy. Kola Awe is currently the chairman of Nasima Export Group and a shareholder and director of Nexport Trade Houses Limited, the first export trade house initiative under a PPP arrangement. So our facilitator this morning is Mr. Kola Awe. And once again, I want to welcome you to the PDF Bridge Export Capacity Building Series, which was set up to build capacity for MSMEs that are interested in export. We'll be talking more about the PDF Bridge as this program continues, but I want to hand over to Mr. Kola Awe right now so that we can start his session. We'll be dealing on the topic, export documentation. That is the topic today. Mr. Kola Awe, over to you.
Thank you very much, Titi. It's a great pleasure being here today. And we'll be looking at a very important topic, which is export documentation and the process for the documentation. You will agree with me that documentation is very key to export. And without adequate and proper documentation, an export transaction cannot be considered very successful. So I would like to go straight to my slide, share my slide with all the participants so that they can have an idea of what we're looking at today and follow accordingly. Okay, we're on the page now. I'll put it on this slideshow. All of us can be on the same page. Thank you very much. That is the topic, understanding export documentation. I'm going to go through this thing in a way that every SME, we have a proper understanding of the documentation process. Like I said, documentation process is very key to an exporter. The success of an exporter does not depend on him or she exporting the commodity, but it's very key that the consignee must be able to clear and receive the commodity. Any process where the consignee is unable to do that, it makes it difficult for him to execute a complete contract. And we all know that in international trade, documents are as good as the cargo. If the cargo is on the good side and the documents are faulty, then the cargo is equally faulty. And if the documents are also good and cargo is faulty, then the document is also faulty. So document is very, very key. The success of any transaction is premised on the success. And you will know that in cross-border trade, several laws govern international trade. And every of these laws have their own prerequisite document. For example, we have the domestic law, like from Nigeria. We have the international laws that governs commercial trade. Then we have the treaties, which are based on bilateral and multilateral agreements. And then we have regional protocols. All of these have their own base of documentation that is required for export. The challenge, what we'll be looking at is, in Nigeria, for example, we have various government agencies that are responsible for issuance of documents as it relates to export. What we see today in Nigeria is that most exporters depend on an average freight forwarder to procure and process their documents for them. I used to say to people, there is nothing stopping you from procuring your document yourself. That way you avoid so many issues and problems that are occasioned from documentation. Success of it, your ability to be able to process the correct documents gives you a whole lot of leverage in exportation. But once you have a wrong and faulty document, what it tends to connote is that the buyer loses confidence and integrity in your person and even in the cargo that you are exporting. It opens a wide gate of suspicions that the shipper does not have a clear-cut understanding and knowledge of the transactions and the documents required in such transaction. That integrity always raises a critical issue when it comes to export. And if you have faulty document also, it creates a misrepresentation of to the intent and purpose of the entire contract agreement. So what we're looking at right now is to look at the sources of documentation. Where does documentation in exports originate from? First, contract agreements. A buyer and a seller must enter, the importer and the exporter, including a third party who could be an orderee, will enter into an agreement as to the terms and conditions of the contract and to the terms and conditions of the transaction. And if you note, particularly those in the documentary credit area, I'm talking about letters of credit, one of the major contents of the letter of credit, it says documents required for negotiation. In that, you will see all the list of documents that are required for negotiation. An average exporter must be able to procure all these documents. His inability to procure the documents simply puts him at a place where he cannot negotiate the contract for payment. And there are basic standard documents that the international law prescribes for export. But once there is an additional contract, additional document by contract, then it is mandatory that the exporter must procure such additional document. I can give you some instances. You can see a contract, a documentary credit or a contract that indicate that the consignment will be inspected by a certain person, and they will include his name and passport number in that particular document. It simply means, aside from every other document, the inspection must be carried out by such person, and that such person must give a clean certificate of inspection. So in a contract situation, every parties to the contracts must ensure that they abide by the terms of those contracts. An average contract has about 19 elements. The 19 elements will include the parties to the contract, the subject matter of the contract, the expiry date, delivery date, the mode of shipment, the documents required, the payment terms, and the trade terms. These are key areas that an average exporter will have to look at. Then inspection is also very key. What kind of inspection will be taking place that an exporter should be able to engage in? Another area is the international commercial laws and regulation. These are laws that governs commercial trades all over the world. We have the International Chambers of Commerce. The International Chambers of Commerce, they regulate the trade terms and the payment terms. So in a case where you enter into a contract that stipulates FOB, it simply means you're free from the insurance documentations and freight documentations. But when the trade terms is indicated CNF, it imposes additional responsibility on you. And not only in terms of trade terms, the international also regulates the payment terms. And in the payment terms, particular documents are highly required for you to meet up with, depending on the type of payments that you have entered into. We also have documents originating from bilateral and multilateral agreements. These are agreements on preferential treatment between countries to promote import and export. A clear-cut example is the General System of Preference Form 1A that allows Nigeria to export its agro-commodity into Europe with a zero or reduced tax tariff. And for you to be able to enjoy tax tariff, there's a requirement of document that you need to have. You need to have a certificate of origin, which is referred to as GSP Form 1A. Also, documents can originate from the creation and establishment of economic blocks. like we have in the West African sub-region, which is the ECOWAS. The ECOWAS has brought up the additional document in exports, such as the ECOWAS Trade Liberalization Scheme that allows us to export within the sub-region duty-free, the Interstate Road Transit Scheme that allows us to process documents for us to move transit from one country to another in the ECOWAS sub-region. Also, the ECOWAS Certificate of Origin. This is an additional certificate of origin. You will know that the International Chambers of Commerce prescribe that every export, every transaction, commercial transaction, must be accompanied by a certificate of origin. But now, because of the economic bloc, an additional certificate of origin has been created by the ECOWAS due to the creation of the economic bloc. Also, it gives us role in the area of ASUL charge, the ASUS charge law. So economic bloc also have additional documents that they create in an export transaction. Also, we look at the extant laws on export procedure in the country of export. Documents are also from these laws. The Nigerian Export Supervision Scheme is a law that regulates export procedure in Nigeria. And the law stipulates that every export must be initiated by the Nigerian Export Proceed Form, which simply means that for you to start any export in Nigeria, you must process the Nigerian Export Proceed Form. The law also stipulates the areas of export permit that you need to get before you can process into before you can engage in an export. And it prescribes the document that you need to put in place, like for example, the pro forma invoice, the certificate of incorporation, NEPC certificate. You need to put this document in place for you to be able to process your NSP form. These are documents that originate from laws, domestic law from Nigeria. Then we also have laws, documents originating from the country of import. The country of import also have a right to regulate trade within their country. So they impose some form of documents that you need to obtain before you can import into their country. Let me give you a typical example. In Nigeria today, before you can import into Nigeria, you have to open your Form N, and you open a Form Q if your value is below $20,000. And the Standard Organization also made provisions that you cannot import into this country except you're able to process your SONCAP. So that's the way it is. So across the West African sub-region, we have similar laws to governing those areas. Like in Ghana now, you cannot import into Ghana except you open your import declaration form. In Liberia, you must open your import permit declaration. In Senegal, they call it DPI. You must open your DPI. That's declaration, the product, the import. It's a French language. Then in America, you cannot import into America without the ISF number, ISF form. The ISF form must be filled in, must be sent to you by the importer, filled here, and then sent back. There is no transaction that can take place except these laws are there. Also, we have laws such as the pre-shipment inspection laws. There are pre-shipment inspection companies that have been employed by certain countries that says that except if they carry out inspection and issue a particular certificate in that country of export, then that goods cannot be exported into their country. And if such good is exported into their country without their inspection, it simply means that the good will be penalized. In West Africa, it's about 25% of the FOB value. Let me try to open it up. For example, if you're exporting to Liberia now, Liberia is a pre-shipment inspection, and Liberia inspection is being governed by Bureau Veritas of Nigeria. So there is no way you can carry out an export into Liberia, expect Bureau Veritas of Nigeria carries out inspection here in Nigeria and seal the container and give you a container seal, a special seal number they put on the container. And when the goods get into Liberia, there is no further inspection as long as the seal of Bureau Veritas is in there. So like that, that's a law originating from the country of import that imposes documentation on an exporter in Nigeria. The same thing with Stonehill, Angola. Exporting to Angola is a similar thing. Exporting to Cameroon. Cameroon is under SGS. SGS have to carry the pre-shipment inspection here before you can carry out. So documents also originate from import process from the country of import. Now let's try to get a proper understanding of export process and documentation. You will see from the chart that an exporter has to relate with several agencies. He has to relate with the importer based on the contract. He has to relate with inspection agencies put in place by either the federal government of Nigeria or independent inspection agencies. He has to relate with the banks. He has to relate with the organized private sector. He has to relate with the shipping company. He has to relate with the government agencies and institutions for export, the forwarding company and transportation. If you look at all these now, you see there are about 8. So that means an exporter relates to 8 to 10 agencies in areas of documentation. This is where we're complaining about multiple documentation, which is one of the major problems for an exporter. And he has to relate with all these agencies for him to be able to carry out one single export transaction. And it comes with a lot of hiccups and headache for an exporter who does not understand the entire process of documentation. Now, let's look at documentation process with all the agencies that we have highlighted earlier. Now, the normal documentation process for an exporter starts with regulatory export permit. It is very wrong for an exporter to go into a transaction without getting the prerequisite export permit. Then after the export permit, he needs to procure his pre-export documentation. Then afterwards, he gets his post-export documentation. Then finally, he has a closing documentation. A lot of us might be wondering, what is a closing documentation? Closing documentations are very key in a transaction, in every export transaction. It brings the transaction to a close. Now, let's examine some of these permits areas one by one. Now, let's look at it now. Agency, type of permit. The first one is NAFDAC. Then we have export permit from NAFDAC. NAFDAC is the Nigeria Food and Drug Administration of Nigeria. It simply means that an exporter that is exporting any food items or drug item needs to possess an export permit from NAFDAC. This is extremely very key. What we're looking at is the process of getting this permit and getting a little bit cumbersome, because the law that provides for this permit simply says that the permit will be issued 28 days after an exporter has made a requirement. We're pushing for them to reduce this number of days because it's amounting to colossal loss to an exporter, particularly an exporter who is going by road. What it simply means that I will have loaded the truck, and wait for 28 days for us to get this export permit. Because part of the documents required for the export permit is your packing list and your invoice. And you don't get a packing list until you have loaded. That's when you know the exact quantity that is going in a truck or in a container. Then afterwards, you have to wait for 28 days. That's really huge for an exporter to take. Then, but you also have the NAQS, Nigerian Agricultural Quarantine Services, that issues export permits. A lot of us might not know this. It is quite impossible for you to export animal products or pets or animal without getting an export permit. This is a permit before you export. It's not post-export permit that we are very used to. But this permit is resident with the animal section of the Nigerian Agricultural Quarantine Services, and it's being called Zoo Sanitary Certificate. Zoo Sanitary Certificate. It's also a certificate that you need to get before you can export any dairy product, either milk, yogurt, any kind of dairy product. You need to get this permit before you can export them out of the country. That's the sanitary certificate. Then if you're exporting animals out of the country, like hatchery eggs, day-old chicks, you also need to get this export permit. This is a startup point for the export when it comes to those items. Then we have the Ministry of Mines and Steel Development that issues a Form J for every registered exporter in the solid mineral sector. An exporter in the solid mineral sector, to export any product, must first of all procure an export permit that allows him to export the solid mineral product. And that form is called Form J, and is resident with the cadastral office in the Ministry of Mines and Steel Development. Also, the Ministry of Environment issues permit, they call it sites, permit for processed wood. In Nigeria today, a lot of people tend to export wood in rough sun and consider them as a processed wood. That's why the Ministry of Environment gives permit for those that are exporting processed wood. Without the permit, you'll be having problem with the forestry department that is in the port, and they might pretend to want to detain or delay your container or your transaction before it leaves. So that's from the Ministry of Environment. Then when it comes to handicrafts and artifacts, the National Museum and Monuments are the agency to go to. You get a permit to export those products. Otherwise, the customs at the border will request for this permit at the point of entry. Then permit for fish and aquatic products is also very key, which is from the Fishery Department of Ministry of Agriculture. And an average exporter that wants to be involved in an export business needs to take note of all this documentation. The absence of this documentation can cause a huge delay for an exporter. Now let's look at the pre-export documentation. I try to break them down to documents, land, sea, and air, then where the document is originating from. The first one is the pro forma invoice. The pro forma invoice, we all know what a pro forma invoice is. The pro forma invoice is an estimate of a contract, of a transaction. It is not the full transaction. It contains an estimate of the transaction. That's why it's a pre-export documentation, so that you can use it to process. The pro forma invoice is used to process for the Nigerian export proceed form. One of the documents that you need to submit to the bank is your pro forma invoice. Then this is originating from an exporter. Then the next one is a Nigerian export proceed form, which is called the NXP. The NXP originates from the bank. Recently, we are now having ENXP compared to what we used to have in the past. We have ENXP now, which means that every NXP process have been simplified and now online. So you can go to tradewindow.com and then process your NXP for any transaction. All you need to do is to upload relevant document like your pro forma invoice and other documents that have been mentioned before you can process your NXP. And once the NXP is being processed and the inspection is taking place, the shipping company, the inspection company will now process it with their loading inspection certificate before you can get your CCI for processing. Now, another form that you need to put is the request for information. Request for information, which is what they call PSI. It's very common in a PSI country, pre-shipment inspection country, where you have to obtain from the inspection agency, whether Bureau Veritas, whether it's BVAC, whether it's Stonehill, whether it's Intertech, you have to fill a request for information form so as to notify them as to the inspection that they want to carry out for you before you can export your product. Like I said, it's very common. It's not for all transactions or all countries, but common with countries that have pre-shipment inspection laws. Then we have the NEPC certificate. The NEPC certificate is a very key certificate. It cuts across all parties, and this is a certificate that certifies you as an exporter. What a lot of people also will not know is that this NEPC certificate, aside from being one of these documents that you need to upload to process your NXP, it is also a document that gives you a right to go inside the port. That's why it says to people, you can do everything by yourself in export except running the documents on the DTI, custom DTI. That's the only thing you cannot do. Every other thing you can do it on your own. An export is a kind of transaction. You can process goods of about worth millions of dollars, and at the end of the day, you leave it at the liberty of other people who you feel or presume understand the business. So that's why the NEPC certificate is there. All you need to do is to use the letterheaded paper of your company, write a request for permit to enter inside the port, and they'll give you an ID card for you to be able to enter inside the port. And the only document that is required for that is your NEPC certificate. Also, there's some document, there's some permit that you also need to get. This permit are basically not permit required by law or required by the country of export, but these are permit required by, for example, by the vessel that is going to carry your boxes, your containers, or your items, particularly when you're going by sea. FCDO issues certificate of analysis for self-ignition product, which is very common with the charcoal that everybody is doing. Most shipping line in Nigeria will not pick up any item without having this certificate in place. That's why we call it a pre-export permit document. So you need to collect this permit from FCDO so that they'll be able to pick. It's not a documentation placed on an exporter by the laws, but placed on an exporter by the shipping company. You see, documents can originate from different agencies requiring some certain documents before they can admit you assess their services. Then the last one is the MSDS. The MSDS is a material safety and data sheet. It's the same thing like a certificate of analysis, but this more particularly in terms of oil products. If you're carrying black oil, if you're carrying anything that is oily, they will request for a material safety and data sheet. And this is for the sea and air. You see that the land does not need a material safety and data sheet. So you need to process your material safety and data sheet. It is being processed by the company. You're the owner of the material, so you know exactly what you need to put in place so that you can have it loaded on board. So now let's look at other areas. We have the international pre-export international driver's license. If you're exporting, you see that one is landing by road, is Ministry of Transport. You need to procure the international driver's license for you to move from Nigeria to any part in West Africa, so that you can have permit to drive within those regions, particularly when your consignment is going by road. We have companies that move their goods, for example, Dangote, companies that move their goods from Lagos to Ghana to Togo, so they have to procure for their drivers their international driver's license. And the last one here which is part of pre-export documentation, is the ECOWAS brown card. ECOWAS brown card is just like an insurance card that permits you to move within the West Africa sub-region. There is no truck or no car that can move in the West Africa sub-region without obtaining the ECOWAS brown card. And they have an expiry date. You can either be 6 months, it can either be 3 months or 6 months. And every time the document expires, you need to find a way of renewing obtaining another one. They can't be renewed. Once it is expired, they cannot be renewed again. So I'll go on. Then we have the post-export documentation. These are documentation that takes place after the export itself had taken place. These are documentation that you need to obtain when the document when the consignment has left the country. So we have the commercial stroke final invoice. Commercial stroke final invoice. You recall that at the beginning in the pre-export, we said pro forma invoice. But now you know exactly what you have in every shipment, so you can issue a commercial stroke final invoice. But there are more other invoices that can be requested by the importer. An importer can also further request that it needs a consular invoice. So it means that invoice that you have must be attested by a consular. And if the invoice is not attested by a consular, then it becomes very difficult for you to negotiate or use that particular document. And sometimes they might also request that the invoice must be certified by an agency, particularly a chambers of commerce. In Nigeria today, if you're exporting to Egypt, you can't export to Egypt with ordinary commercial or final invoice. You need to certify that invoice by the chambers of commerce. And the chambers of commerce in Nigeria charges about 5% of the FOB value before they can certify it for you. So it's very key. When you hear something like certified invoice or consular invoice, always remember that it imposes additional responsibility and additional cost, so that when you're making your quote, you should factor in those costs. If, for example, you're exporting 100,000 worth of goods and you have to pay 5% of that, that means you have to factor that 5% to the cost of goods. Then consular invoice are invoices that are attested to by the consular in the country of export. Another typical case study that I give to you, let's look at Niger and China. Export of sesame seed between Nigeria and between Niger and China is being given special preference in terms of duty, that the tariff that they pay in the country in China. Like, for example, if you export sesame seed from Nigeria, you'll be paying about 10 to 15%. But if you're exporting sesame seed from Niger, you pay between 2 and 5%. So, and that one of the requirement imposed is that for Niger company to assess that 2 to 5%, that invoice must be certified by their consular. And that is when they get it satisfied by their consular. Then we have the packing list. The packing list is very key. Success of the clearance of any item is based on the packing list. So the packing list contain basic information It contains information as to quantity. It contains information as to type of packaging, and it contains information as to volume. Those are the key things that it contains. The packing list must describe the item in total, exactly as it is. Let me give you a typical example. Maybe you're doing 1,000 bags of sesame seed. You say 1,000 bags of sesame seed packed in 50 kg polypropylene bags. You need to indicate the kind of packaging and the type of packaging you have, because we have jute bags, we have polypropylene bags. What people don't know is if it gets to the country of import and you didn't put those items there, it can cause you a heavy delay for the importer. And when there's a delay on the part of the importer, he's no longer interested. He's losing confidence in your product. So packing list is extremely very key. Like key areas: the quantity, the packaging, and the volume, the type of packaging and the volume. Everything has to be completely indicated. It is more complex when you're doing manufactured product. Manufactured product that has liters, mLs, and every other thing. So you need to be very critical when you're making that into place. Then we have the clean certificate of inspection. The clean certificate of inspection cut across all boards, and thankfully enough, we are online, so we don't really have a problem with the clean certificate of inspection right now. And the clean certificate of inspection is issued by the government-approved inspection agencies such as Cobalt International Services. That's number one. Then we have Kaman SAI. Cobalt covers Lagos before until 1st of August that they change over to Kaman SAI. Then we have an Enoli technology, which is resident in the Southeast and the South-South. So it's very key that you note the agencies that are involved for the issuance of clean certificate of inspection. What the clean certificate of inspection simply typified is that the item you're exporting has been inspected and considered clean. If they inspect it and they see that there's some anomaly in the inspection, what they will do is to give you a non-clean certificate of inspection. So when you see a non-clean certificate of inspection, it means there's an issue with the shipment that you're carrying out with. But once it gets the CCI, that tells you that it's the exact thing that you said that is contained in your invoice and is what they saw at the point of inspection. The issuance is basically based on what they inspect, and the content of it is basically on what they have put in place. Then the next one is the single goods declaration. The single goods declaration, which is the custom, we call it SGD, is being issued by custom. We have two types, we have two areas of it. We have the single goods declaration, and then we have the access note. What the single goods declaration means is that you have entered into the custom DTI all the basic information in respect of that transaction, and custom has certified the goods fit for export. The back end of that single goods declaration, you see assessment note. Assessment note, we simply read 000. The reason assessment note is reading 000 is because customs export does not attract any duty, nor does it attract VAT. So it's going to read 000 as the assessment note. But the combination of the single goods declaration and assessment note is a complete document from custom. Then another post-export documentation that you need to procure is the certificate of fumigation. Certificate of fumigation, and it's from NAQS. It's called phytosanitary certificate. This is a certificate recognized globally. Of all fumigation certificate, NAQS certificate is the one that is recognized globally. When we get to the challenges of exports and everything, I'll be giving you case studies of problems that can come from all these pre and post-export documentation that you need to be very careful of when you're filling the form. So a certificate of fumigation simply means that the products have been fumigated. The challenge we're having in Nigeria today is there's a little bit of conflict of interest of operations, because the phytosanitary is a document that is recognized globally, while the laws of Federal Republic of Nigeria stipulates that every product or commodity for export must be fumigated by the Federal Produce Inspection Services. And when the Federal Produce Inspection Service fumigates, and at the end of the day, NAQS2 needs to fumigate, then we'll probably be having double fumigations, but we need to find out there's a way people tend to solve all this issue. The easiest way is to get this certificate of fumigation from FPIS and present it to NAQS, and then NAQS will be able to give you the phytosanitary certificate. Phytosanitary, if we look at the content, when we get to the challenges, there are some key contents that if you don't abide by the contents, then it nullifies that document automatically. For example, fumigation date must read like 7 days before the departure of the vessel. If you make the error of having a date on the departure of the vessel, it nullifies that particular certificate. And it has a place for HS code, which is very key. An error of the HS code simply change the status of the product. So you need to be very clear about what the HS code is stating on that phytosanitary certificate. Now we're looking at certificate of weight, quality, certificate of quality, weight, and fumigation, which is issued by phytosanitary certificate, Federal Produce Inspection Services. Please note that these agencies, NAQS and FPIS, they are resident in the port. So when you carry out transaction, which is mostly what people do nowadays, is to fumigate container. The laws does not permit for fumigation of containers. The law stipulates that every commodity must be warehoused in a registered warehouse by Federal Police Inspection Services. And Federal Police Inspection Services must conduct fumigation on those commodities. The idea of putting cargo inside container and then put fumigation materials inside the container is not allowed in law, which is what you see in terms of practice. A lot of people tend to practice it. They open up their container and throw phosphites into the container, and then they lock it up. What simply happens is that by the time the phosphite kills everything, the pest that it needs to kill, then the residue will stay upon your cargo. And that's why we're having a level of rejections all over Europe and other parts of the world. Now, the next one is the certificate of commodity export. This certificate of commodity export is levy that is imposed by the Ministry of Trade and Investment on every export. It is been a lot of exporters tend to want to escape this. That's why they can obtain this certificate. But this certificate is very, extremely very key. Federal government imposes an amount of money on export of some certain commodities. Every commodity, there are 5 major commodities that you have to pay $5 per ton before you can export those commodities. And when you export those commodities after paying the money, then you need to obtain your certificate of commodity export. And those $5 are imposed on products like cocoa, ginger, gum arabic, rubber, and cotton. Cocoa, ginger, gum arabic, rubber, and cotton. $5 per ton. You need to pay it through the Federal Produce Inspection Services. And then any other product outside this 5, you pay $3 per ton. Then it is when you make this payment that you have a right to the certificate of commodity export, which is being imposed by FPIS. Now, another post-export is the certificate of origin. Certificate of origin. Certificate of origin, as we know, is the proof of evidence of country of origin and domiciliation of the company. Those are the 2 basic things that a certificate of origin does. It proves that this company originates from XY country and that this commodity originates from XY country. That's what the certificate of origin does. So in certificate of origin, there are several types of certificate of origin. You know, some of us, those of you into import, I import also. You have what they call CCVO, Clean Certificate of Value and Origin. Clean Certificate of Value and Certified Certificate of Value and Origin. That's a CCVO. That's the kind of certificate of origin. Such kind of origin is not issued by the Chambers of Commerce, but it's issued by the company and endorsed by the company, stating that this is the value and this thing originates from XY country. Then we also have the certificate of origin that is issued by manufacturer himself. Then we have the certificate of origin that is issued by the Chambers of Commerce, which is the only agency of international agency that is permitted to issue certificate of origin, which is the Chambers of Commerce. But under the Chambers of Commerce, we also have the certificate of origin that come about because of the ECOWAS trade liberalization scheme that allows for duty-free export within the sub-region. So under the scheme, the law provides that that scheme must be accompanied with a certificate of origin. And rather than depending on the international certificate of origin, which is the one by International Chambers of Commerce, they also came up with an ECOWAS certificate of origin. So when you see that certificate of origin, it's stated ECOWAS certificate of origin. And there are two types, the pink one and the white one. One covers for the FCDO, that's the West African, English-speaking West African countries, and the other one is for the French-speaking West African countries. Now, the key thing about this certificate of origin is because you are exporting in the region without paying duty, one of the documents you need to have is the ECOWAS certificate of origin alongside the international certificate of origin. If you do not have this certificate of origin and your custom declarations alongside with the document, it is completely impracticable for you to export duty-free within the West Africa sub-region. So those are the two. I try to cover them in one string. So the ECOWAS certificate of origin and then this ECOWAS. Then we also have the ECOWAS movement certificate. Movement certificates are extremely very key. They are extremely very key in export, particularly when you're going by road. You will see on the line, I said land, the sea, you don't need a movement certificate when you're going by sea. When you're going by sea, it's very common to have the EUR form 1A, the EUR form movement certificate. That's what you have. So the ECOWAS movement certificate simply indicates the movement of your goods by land and how many countries that you transit through. So that there is no diversion. The reason is they don't want any diversion to occur when your good is transiting from one country in the region to another. So you have to have your ECOWAS movement certificate, which must be stamped, which is already stamped by custom to say, I'm going to Ghana, so I'm going to transit to other countries. And in Europe, you have the EUR form, which is also the EUR is also a movement certificate, similar role with that of ECOWAS movement certificate. Then we have the GSP certificate, which is what I mentioned earlier, the General System of Preference certificate that allows export to take place, exports from Nigeria to EU countries to be admitted under lower or zero tariff, which is also very key. So that means if you're exporting mostly agro commodities and commodities from Nigeria to Europe, and you want to get a reduced duty, it is imperative that you must accompany it with a GSP certificate, EUR certificate of GSP certificate of origin. If it does not have the certificate of origin, then it simply means that the goods did not originate from Nigeria, and there is no proof that these goods originate from Nigeria. So in documentation process, it is very key that you procure all these documents so that you can take benefits of what you have on the other side, the country of import. Then we have the ICO1, which is very common with cocoa, combined certificate of origin and value for cocoa products. This is internationally prescribed for exporters of cocoa that they must have this document. Then we're looking at insurance. Insurance is also a post-export documentation. Either if the transaction is under a trade terms of cost, insurance, and freight, it simply means you have to put your insurance in place. And even if it's not a cost, insurance, and freight transaction, it's always very good for you to put insurance in place. Let me give you a typical example. There are some people that have made shipment, exporters like me, that have made shipment, and due to the faultiness of the container, water was able to get inside the container, and the water did some damage to the cargo. Even though the transaction was not a CIF transaction, but the insurance was, marine insurance certificate was obtained, so it was easy for the exporters to make claims, and they were able to get the claims back from the shipping company. So insurance is key, either for CIF transaction, FOB's transaction, or CNF transaction. It's very good key documents that we need to procure as an exporter. Now, part of the documents also includes the bill lading. The document bill lading is a lot of us do not understand the power of a bill lading in an export transaction, because a bill lading is simply defined as the evidence of proof of carriage and evidence and ownership of goods. This is the proof of carriage and evidence of ownership of goods. That's what the bill lading says. But the function of the bill lading goes beyond that. And when we're looking at errors, we'll be looking at some of the common errors in export in documentation I'll be opening up some of the errors that can come in from the bill of lading. But the truth of the matter is that the bill of lading can secure your transaction. The bill of lading can secure your payment. The bill of lading can save you a lot of agony that comes from export. A lot of people are very conversant with the one standard bill of lading, and without trying to look at the other bill of lading. We have over 20 types of bill of lading, and such you can deploy any of those bill of lading to your benefit as an exporter, which is very key. Export is highly competitive in terms of cost, price, and time. Cost, price, and time. It is very key. So a bill of lading can save you time, depending if you know how to apply that particular bill of lading. Let me give you an example. For example, if I'm doing a shipment that is very close by, the singular thing we know is that bill of lading, the standard bill of lading is issued 2 or 3 days after the departure of the vessel. So that means in the 2-3 days that the vessel have departed, the vessel might have even gotten to the country. And then the demurrage and the demurrage free days start running and the demurrage start running. And then by the time you get the documents, you need to put it on the DHL. That takes a lot of time. So what do? You can deploy a kind of bill lading, a document called request for receipt for shipment. It's called RFI. It's a bill of lading, but they call it RFI bill of lading. It's a receipt for shipment bill of lading. That kind of bill of lading is obtained even before the arrival of the vessel, so that you don't need to wait for the vessel to come and load, but you've already gotten the receipt for shipment bill of lading. And when the vessel comes, you just load the container. Before it gets to the point of destination, you've already forwarded the bill of lading to your consignee. You can also take advantage of telex, which was what a lot of people deployed during this COVID-19 period. Very COVID-19 period, because the DHL still were not moving, logistics was down, infrastructures were down, and shipments, a lot of people took the advantage of the bill of lading, telex bill of lading. You can do a telex bill of lading to get your bill of lading without having to collect it from the shipping line. You can do a seaway bill without having to go to the shipping line to collect the bill of lading, so that they just send it to the country of importer. The importer goes there to do it. You can also use it to safeguard payments by deploying a surrender bill of lading. A surrender bill of lading will nominate a particular person that the bill of lading will be surrendered to, and the importer will not pick it up except he has fulfilled every necessary obligation to that regard. So there are several bill of lading. It's a whole topic on its own. Then we're looking at airway bill. Airway bill is very common with air transaction, and airway bill is very key. The only documentation issues with airway bill is where you're going either with a consolidator, whether you're going with a consolidator as a house bill lading or a master's bill lading. An exporter should be able to identify which that will contain his own name, so that it can be identified as the shipper. Then the way bill, the contents of all these way bills, bill of lading and ABR, are very critical in export. So critical that an error in any of it can nullify the entire transaction or cause serious delay in the transaction. Now we'll look at certificate of analysis. Certificate of analysis. Certificate of analysis is basically for solid minerals products and manufactured products. The certificate of analysis to give an analysis as the components of the manufactured products, the materials used in the manufactured products, the impact, the hazard assessments, and everything. So every shipment that needs this kind of documents are essential as a post-export documentation. Loading report. Like I said earlier, we have what it calls pre-shipment inspection company. If a pre-shipment inspection company inspects your products for export to a PSI country, what it simply means is that you must attach a loading report to the document that you're sending to the importer. If you don't get a loading report from the accredited inspection company, then it becomes very difficult for you to be able to prove that inspection has been carried out. And sometimes the reason why it's difficult to prove, the laws in Nigeria states that when your cargo gets into the port, customs has the right to open it. So more often than not, you can see customs opening up the box to see exactly what you have there in it. So when they open it, that means the seal that the inspection agency have put on your container is broken. So when the container gets there, there's no proof that that thing was inspected. So what you need to do quickly is to attach your loading inspection certificate and attach it with your commodity, then it will just go directly to the whole place. Somebody was just asking, please, what are the types of pre-export and export documentation required for export of textiles? Textiles are basically under AGOA and apparels. It's better for you to go through the AGOA. The process of AGOA is a little bit different from normal export because they have a different kind of certification that will be given to you, particularly when you're going to the US. But it's similar, but a little bit different. You need to apply to customs directly. Custom officers will have to come to your factory, do the inspection in your factory, then before you go, then you now get a certificate of origin by custom. And under that scheme, a particular custom officer, one or two of them, have been mandated to sign. So if they don't see the signature of those people on that bill of lading, then it becomes very difficult. Certificate of origin, it's done very difficult to prove that it's from Nigeria. Somebody said with all this documentation process, how can an SME with small capital cope with this? It's among us because some of these agencies are in different locations. They're in more than one locations, and it's very difficult for you to be able to go around there. Federal Produce is in Ijora, NEQS is in Ikeja, Custom is in Apapa, and then Peru Veritas is in Victoria Island. So we have different locations for all this stuff. Does this permit relate to an individual export, or permit is permit? Once the law says there's a need for you to obtain permit, then there's a need for you to obtain the permit. It's good that you also obtain permit. Say, please, what export document do I need? Like I said, you need FCDO certification for the container to be picked up by the shipping line. All right. Now the last one is the laissez-passer. The interstate road transit. These are parts of post-export documentation. The interstate road transit scheme. All of us know that there is an interstate road transit scheme in place for movement of goods within the West Africa sub-region. So what it simply means that these interstate road transit papers must be obtained. If, for example, I'm going to Ghana, the moment I get into the Republic of Benin, I must obtain the interstate road transit scheme and pay my transit fees. Naturally, if the national guarantee scheme is in place, we don't have to be paid transit fees. But because of the national guarantee that is not yet in place, we have to pay transit fees. And that transit fee currently is about 1 million CFA for a small truck, that's a 20-ton truck, and 2 million CFA for a 40-ton truck, compared to what we were paying before. This was basically because Nigeria have closed the border. So they believe that any goods coming into their country right now is smuggled goods. So they hide their transit fees. So these transit papers must be obtained. And once you obtain the transit paper in Benin, we hand it over to the custom of Republic of Benin. Then you obtain that from Republic of Benin. The Republic of Benin will hand it over to those in Ghana. It's only in Ghana that we have electronic tracking. When you get to Ghana, they don't give customs to go with you. They give you an electronic tracking on the truck that they use in tracking them. Then you have the laissez-passer paper, which is also transit for basically for all trucks, all forms of trucks and everything that are cars that are moving within the West Africa sub-region. All right, finally, we'll be looking at closing documents. Many of you will be wondering, what is a closing document? An export transaction is incomplete until the exporter is able to assess his or her export proceed, and the next imposes strict documentation compliant on exporter to be able to enable them assess their proceed. So if you carry out an export transaction and you're not able to close your document, you have not been able to perfect your export transaction. Because if you don't close your document, that simply means you cannot access the funds in your export proceed account. But if the document is closed, then you can access the funds in your export proceed account. You'll notice that a lot of people that engage in informal export, they don't have this problem because the funds naturally is coming to their corporate domiciliary account instead of an export proceed domiciliary account, which is why the government is putting on a lot of pressure for people to engage in formal export so that we can have more FX in the export proceed account than we have in the normal account. Nigerians are taking advantage of the dual exchange rate. So these documents are closely referred to as closing documents. So what are the closing documents? It means a stamped and endorsed NSP. the NSP must be stamped by custom and signed by custom. That is when the document is closed. The CCI must be stamped by custom and endorsed by custom. Then that document is closed. Then the final invoice and packing list must be endorsed by custom and signed by custom. Then it's closed. Then you attach a copy of your bill in, either the original or copy, because the bill comes in 3 copies and 3 originals. So you attach, once you attach those one to it, you have closed your document. And how do you close it? These documents must be taken to the bank. So when you take this document to the bank, is an evidence that a transaction has been fulfilled and complete, and the government and the bank is at liberty to allow you access, not to withdraw, to your foreign export proceed. Once the bank, if they don't receive this document, they cannot allow you access to your export proceed. That is when you complete the documentation process. So that's why we call them closing documents. Like I said earlier, it is not applicable to those in informal export, because the informal exporter has no record of his export transaction, so there is no documents that is closing. But a formal exporter needs to get all the documents. And if you're operating under a letter of credit, you need to get more than these documents. Apart from all these documents, you have to attach every document indicated in the contract or in the letter of credit. Then you must attach all those documents, take it to the bank. Then the bank will go through it one by one and see how they can negotiate the document. Where there is errors in such documents, there are 2 options open up depending on where the error is coming from. It's either the bank insists on an amendment, depending on where the error is coming from, or if it's not an amendment, the bank can insist that you notify the importer to accept the discrepancy that is on the documentation so that they can negotiate it. And if the importer accepts the discrepancy, that makes it easier for you to negotiate. But there's some discrepancies that you cannot accept. The importer cannot accept. So you must be very careful in your documentation process. Exactly 12 o'clock right now. And then I'd like to take some critical defects in documentation. Here I'm going to try to give typical example and case studies or errors that people make in documentation process. That's what I'll try to do in this area. Now, when we look at completely wrong information, these are some of the defects we have in our documentation. But let me mention here, an average exporter, one of the qualities that he needs to have is diligent. An average exporter must be diligent. And diligent simply means having eyes for little details. If you're this kind of person, always in a hurry to write, always in a hurry to complete forms, or some set of people that don't like filling forms, you will have problems when it comes to export. Like I said, your document is as good as your cargo. No matter how the quality of your cargo, the best premium quality, and your documents are faulty, your cargo is equally faulty. So an average exporter must be very diligent, must be very careful on crossing the T's and dotting the I's, and reading through and through and through your documentation so that there is no error. When a document is completely wrong, it's giving completely wrong information, then there is going to be a delay. That is very critical. How can a document give completely wrong information? For example, now, if you're exporting, let me give an example now. Somebody that is exporting cashew nuts. And the person exporting cashew nut is exporting the cashew nut in jute bags that is not new, old jute bags. And he erroneously put in his invoice or packing list and says that jute bags. And by the time we get to the country of import and they are seeing old jute bags, that is a ground for delay. That is a ground for delay for any exporter, because the information is what? Completely wrong. what we advise exporter to say, because the law does not allow us to use fairly used jute bags. There's nothing like fairly used jute bags. So what I tell people to include, rather than using the fairly used jute bags, when you know that the jute bag is old, you just say seaworthy jute bags, that these jute bags are seaworthy, even though they are what? They're extremely on the fairly used side. But if you now put fairly used and say new, or you just say jute bags, you're giving a completely wrong information. Wrong information also, which is very critical, can come in terms of HS code. A lot of people leave HS code insertions for their freight forwarder. A HS code must be inserted in your bill of lading. HS code must be inserted in your phytosanitary certificate. HS code must be inserted in your invoice. So you notice that once the HS code is wrong, it has changed the nomenclature of that particular product. If you put the HS code of ginger for a cargo of cashew nuts, that means what you're exporting is ginger, but what they are seeing is cashew nut. That's a fundamental wrong information. So it's very, very key for us to note that. Then we also have defects is partially wrong information, which is the example that I gave of the jute bags. Those are partially wrong. The information is not correct, but it's extremely on the wrong side. They're fraudulently obtained and fake documentation. This is extremely very key, and this is common in export, and this is common by freight forwarders that are not very knowledgeable in the business of export, in export documentation and processes. It is unfortunate that most of the documents that we mentioned earlier in your post-shipment documentation, some of these documents are available in the open market. They are all available in the open market. And if you're not conversant with where to obtain the original one, you'll be leaving yourself at the mercy of a freight forwarder to help you to obtain, fraudulently obtain one or the fake documentation for you. We have experienced fake document. You remember the 5 million worth of vegetable that was returned from UK by air? That was as a result of a fake documentation. You also remember containers that were returned, hibiscus containers that were returned from Mexico. That was also as a result of fake documentation. And till date, it is still existing. Recently, one of my shipmen, I was a victim of, fairly victim of fake documentation from Port Harcourt. And it was so shocking that the agent was telling me that this is how they do it and this is how they've been doing it. And he was telling me exactly where they got the document from. And I told him by accident, he said, so those are the old things. So one of the problems is fake documentation. There are omissions in documentation, in information. If you omit in information, it is extremely very critical in export. If you omit, particularly on some particular documents, you cannot afford to omit. A letter T, LTD, if the name of your company is Kolawole Aware & Co. Nigeria Limited, and you just wrote Kolawole Aware & Co., you don't put Nigeria Limited, that omission, you're not the owner of that document. As far as it's concerned. That bill of lading must be amended. There's no two ways about it. You must amend the bill of lading. Now, you know what it takes to amend the bill of lading when the consignment is already in the country of import. It means you have to send back the 3 originals and the 3 copies that was sent to the importer. It has to come back to the shipping line in Nigeria. Then you now have to make the amendments. Then the shipping line have to reissue a new one. Then you now have to send the new one back. So that's the consequences when you make an omission. Omission has to letter T, letter I, letter. So diligence is key for average exporter. Another one is a problem with making documentation is incomplete documentation. Incomplete documentation. Documents are incomplete when an exporter does not understand the documentation requirements for export. This is extremely very common. So you see a lot of people, by the time their goods get to the country of import, then the importer will say, no, you didn't send this particular document. Say, no, I didn't know about that. You didn't send this particular document. I say, no, I didn't know about that. So it's very key that we have a complete knowledge of the process of documentation, so that we don't fall into incomplete documentation. Illegible documentations are mutilations. In globally, there are some documents that you cannot mutilate, you cannot touch, you cannot erase, you cannot TPEX. Once the document is issued, is issued. The only alternative is amendment. An amendment must be made by the company that issued it. The phytosanitary, if there's an error of T, W, you don't have any right to mutilate it. You have to take it back to them to perfect the error. Your bill of lading cannot be mutilated. You cannot put any item. If you make a mistake or you notice a mistake, request for amendment. Don't try to say they typed it in it so I can do my own typing and put the T on it or put the Y on it. No. Mutilated document, when you send it, will actually be rejected. Illegible, also when you don't write clearly for them, for the custom officer in the country of import to see. The problem with most of these critical defects is the consequences are not here in Nigeria. The consequences are in the country of import. So which means that the consignment will have got into the country of import and the importer is about to clear, but he's finding it extremely difficult for him to clear the goods. That's where the consequences is. And what does it mean? It means the cargo is already sitting on ground. And due to documentation problem, they are finding it difficult for them to clear it. For sure, such person will not come back to you. It will not come back to you because why? The demurrage cost is extremely very heavy. In Ghana, something as small as Ghana, demurrage per day is $40 per day. So if I delay a consignment for 10 days, the man is paying additional $400 for that particular shipment. So inconsistency in information. If we have noticed the several documents that we have to fill, that we have to have in export. The document must be consistent. There must be consistency in the phytosanitary, in the FPIs, in the bill lading, in the pro forma invoice, in the packing list. In every of those documents, there must be consistency. Once there is inconsistency in those documents, there is inconsistency in the instruction. And the only way the inconsistency can be rectified is by an amendment customer estimation. The document must be consistent, and they must make sure that the documents are consistent. The numbers and the figures are also consistent. Then we have typographical errors, which are very common, which is why we have to be very diligent when we're looking at export. Then non-compliance with contract agreements. This is extremely very key, and it has to do with all the entire document. The moment there's a contract and you did not comply with the contents and the documents you got for the contract, then you have created a problem for yourself. So it is key that we study the content, the documents, and then we go with them. Challenges in export documentation. What are the basic challenges an exporter can face in documentation? First, lack of knowledge and understanding of the process. I've said it earlier. Many exporters, a lot of the exporters depend on the freight forwarder. And that's why a lot of exporters are having problems when it comes to documentations. They depend on the freight forwarder to get them the phytosanitary. They depend on the freight forwarder to get them the FPI's certificate. They even depend on the freight forwarder to fill NSP for them. Some of them leave NSP for freight forwarder. But thankfully now, you have to input your TIN number for you to be able to do. Some will still release their TIN number and give it to an import, a freight forwarder. And a freight forwarder that wants to make money will pretend to you that like he knows the entire business and start filling what he knows. He doesn't even know the HS code that we input. He doesn't know some of the details that you need to input. He doesn't know some few things. So it is very key. The challenge is that exporters should build capacity to understand documentation and understand the process involved in documentation. Number two, overdependence on freight forwarder, which is another challenge. I used to say something everywhere, and I say to people that, and I've said it earlier, that the only thing you cannot do is to run custom entry as an exporter. You can do every other thing yourself. You can go into the port yourself. Stop depending on the freight forwarder. Stop. I have depended on the freight forwarder in this COVID-19 because I couldn't go to Port Harcourt to carry out my shipment myself or by my staff. And the freight forwarder gave me a fake phytosanitary certificate. That's how bad it is with my number of years. And the amazing thing is that when you look at this certificate, it's not different from the one issued from the original agency. So there's no need for you to depend on freight forwarder. Understand the system, understand the process, find out the location where you can get this document, find out the requirements that you need to get this document, and then go ahead and process those documents yourself. So, but dependence on freight forwarder is one of the major challenges, and it has led to a lot of cancellation of contracts. It has led to broken down, even down to vessels, online booking of vessels. Exporters will leave booking of vessels to freight forwarder. What does it know? It doesn't know as much as you know. That's the problem because 90% of them, over 90% of them, they specialize in import. They can close their eyes and clear any goods because majority of transactions that take place is in import. So when it comes to export, they don't even know. They don't know the transit time of a vessel. They don't know how long it's going to take a vessel to come in. They don't know which vessel specializes in particular routes. They don't know which vessel has a shorter transit time. All they know is that give me your cargo, I'll put it on the container and go. I'm good. And they can do that. But when you have goods that have very short lifespan, then you're in trouble. Then multiple documentation. We're hoping that we can get a single window moving on in Nigeria today so that multiple documentation issues can be reduced because there's a lot of multiple documentation that is there in export. You feel close to 20, 15 to 20 forms in an export transaction. If we have the single window, we can access all these forms in one place and we'll be able to ship them directly. Somebody saying that, good afternoon, I'm interested in Sesame Seed that you mentioned that the packing list is important. Is there an agency that prepare the documents or I produce it on your packing list is produced by the exporter? If you look at the packing list is produced by the exporter. All you need to do is get a critical content of the packing list, which I said earlier. You understand? The packing list, you say 1 by 40 foot container set to contain 1,000 bags of sesame seed packed in 50 kg bag, packed in polypropylene bag of 50 kg. That's all. You've mentioned the critical part so that when the customs sees it, they are going to count the number of bags. If it's 1,000, they say, yeah. Then they're going to look at the package. Is it polypropylene? Yes. Then they look at the quantity inside. Is it 50 kg? Yes. You're good. So that's what takes for the packing list. Say, cool, the certificate of origin be issued by chambers of commerce? Yes, but certificate of origins are the major certificate of origin are issued by chambers of commerce, but we have certificate of origin that can be issued by manufacturers themselves. They can be issued by manufacturers themselves. I'll give an example, certificate of origin and value, certificate of origin and value, FCDO. They can be issued by the manufacturers themselves. So please, where's the office location of the PSI company for Southeast and South? PSI, pre-shipment inspection. When you're talking about the one in Lagos, Nenoli is in Port Harcourt. They are based in Port Harcourt. I don't know their precise address. But other pre-shipment of inspection are global. If you Google Perry Veritas address in Nigeria, you see all their address. If you Google SGS address in Nigeria, you see all their address. Somebody saying I have missed a lot. There's a possibility of having a recorded version. My wonderful sister Titi will be able to give you that. So let me continue here. So inconsistency in information, the lack of information on import procedure, the absence of a single window, absence of harmonized and simplified export documentation process. We don't have it in Nigeria right now. Our export process has not been simplified like we have in import. Today, when you want to import, everything is simplified. Everything has been harmonized. You don't have any problem. You want to do NAFDAC import permit, you go out to the NAFDAC import permit, you process your import permit, you make your payment online, and you get everything. The physical content has been reduced when it comes to import, but the same cannot be said for export. But export has taken a good leap with the electronic transfer, electronic NSP. So some of you in the industry will notice that the electronic NSP has saved us about 3 days. I don't know whether you noticed that. Before now, when they were using the paper NSP, the bank has to transmit it from the branch to the head office to callback. But now those transmission is gone. There's about a day or two that has been saved now. And then when you have to put up the problem that you have, when they say that port of shipment, you make a mistake and put a Papa instead of Tinkan, that is gone because the document is just online. And all the ports, whether Tinkan or Papa, they'll be able to see those documentation. Another one is a lack of information on import procedure. A lot of people don't know the procedure for import, and they have lost goods. They have lost a lot of goods for not being able to know the import procedure. Some have paid penalty. Like I said, if a country is a pre-shipment inspection country, and you fail to carry out the inspection in Nigeria, like in Mali is a Peru Veritas, you pay 25% of the FOB value. So imagine you're exporting $100,000 worth of goods. And when the goods get there, because you fail and you don't know the import procedure, then you'll be paying 25%. That's $25,000. That's a lot of money. And then also, if you don't know the prerequisite document that the importer needs to initiate, and you just ship because the importer himself does not know, then it becomes a problem. But when you're using experienced freight forwarder, they will tell you the document that they need to have before they can make that export transaction. Inability to apply the prerequisite ICT knowledge. Many exporters nowadays believe they are outdated, so they leave that process for freight forwarders to help them to do. So it is very key that this thing. I said about some of these defects, where possible, can be amended, replaced, or the discrepancies accepted. Yeah, the bill of lading can be amended. The phytosanitaries can be amended. Invoice can be amended. Packing list can be amended. Many one of them can be amended. And then what are the consequences of the defective? According to the 3 Ds in export. 3 Ds of export: the delay, the desertion, and the destruction. Those are the consequences. You have a problem, it's going to cause a lot of delay. Importers don't like delay because some of them are brokers and they have made some forward deliveries and they have signed forward contracts. And when your consignment comes and they are having delay because of the documentation, then you have created a problem for them. Some is complete detention. Like if you're exporting to India, particularly agro-commodity, and there's a problem, like you don't have an HS code or a phytosanitary certificate, they will detain that product. Then some is outright destruction. We are very conversant with that in America. When you export yam and the yam does not go through the process, it's just completely destroyed. Then the last one, which is extremely not very common, rejection. Rejection means that they will reject it and they want you to come and take it back. That's not very common. Or with the intervention of some government agencies, we have had transactions that were rejected in the country of import. An opportunity was given to them to bring it back to Nigeria. I want to thank you very much. And that's the end of the slide right now. I think we're going to the Q&A session.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Kolawe, for this. We've thoroughly enjoyed your session. We're going into the Q&A. Yeah. And I'm sure most of the questions in the Q&A session, you can see them, sir. So
I'm seeing some of them.
Okay. So you can just scroll them one by one and answer live. I'm sure the people that post questions are waiting to hear from you. So let's just go right in. Yes.
Is the fishery department only area of Ministry of Agriculture that focus on what about crops and seasons and other livestock? Okay, the fishery department is for fish and fish products. When it comes to livestock like chickens, like eggs, like hatchery eggs, that's the animal section of the phytosanitary Nigerian Agricultural Quarantine Services. But the crops and the season are under Ministry of Agriculture. But livestock like chickens, hatchery eggs, they are under they get the export permit from the Nigerian Agricultural Services animal section. That's from Koyo more. Then Doris is asking, please, what are the types of pre-export and export documentation required for export of textiles? I think I've answered that when I was going on. This is basically export under the AGWA when you're going to the United States of America. And the export procedure, it's a little bit different from the normal export because there's a requirement that customs must have to issue a certificate of origin, aside from the certificate of origin that you get from the chambers of commerce, which is just the only difference there. And also that inspection must be carried out by specified and accredited customs to come and inspect your product as you are carrying out the shipment. But when it comes to air freight, we're using air, but you know that air freight is not well policed like sea and land. So a lot of consignment, and the reason for that is that the air freight allows for export without invoice for goods less than $500. So you can export goods less than $500, and you don't really need all the documentations that you need to do when you're doing sea and air. And that's why you see when exports are going, the value that they put on those products are not on the high side. Please, what document do I need to export charcoal? Away from the standard documents, your invoice, packing list, certificate of origin. You don't need Ministry of Environment because charcoal is not within the Ministry of Environment. But before a shipping line, any shipping line in Nigeria, before they will carry your consignment, they will need a FCDO certificate. So you need to get that FCDO certificate from the FCDO to say that the charcoal is not combustible. Could the certificate of origin be issued by the state chambers of commerce? Yeah, the state chambers of commerce will issue certificate of origin as long as it's a NASIMA chambers of commerce, like in Port Harcourt. You get it from Port Harcourt FASIMA. They are the one that issue the certificate of origin. But because it's online, they also have to relate with Lagos. So Lagos will complete the entire transaction, or you can process it from there. Good afternoon, sir. I'm interested in Sesame Seed. You mentioned that packing list is important. I answered that we're going. Packing list is one of the important documents for export. Packing list and invoice are key document for export alongside your bill of lading. And the content of your packing list must be able to describe the product. I give you an example. 1 by 40-foot container said to contain 1,000 bags of sesame seed packed in 50 kg polypropylene bags. Those are the way you do it. You've identified the key areas that will not bring about inconsistency or confusion to the custom officer at the country of import. What is the government's plan for automating our export? Like I said, that is in place. They've started, NEPC had a program recently on the single window sometime last year at the Radisson Blue Hotel. The plans are in place to have our exports automated, and we have a single window. And to show that that plan is in place is the e-export, ENXP. The starting point is the ENXP, and after that, I believe we'll be able to go further than that. Good afternoon. I'm interested in Sesame Seed, but okay, I've answered that, please. Madubuchi said, please, where is the office location of PSI company for the Southeast and South? The name of the company is Nenoli Technologies. Maybe you can Google it. I know the head office is in Port Harcourt. I don't know precisely where the office is in Port Harcourt, but the head office is in Port Harcourt. If you Google Nenoli Technologies, you'll be able to get their exact office in Port Harcourt. So I know this from Said. Said said, no, I have missed a lot. Is there a possibility for, I believe there's going to be a possibility for it to have a recorded version from Madam And I say, please, Olalade, please, who issues the certificate of honor? The exporter certificates of analysis are particularly for a product that goes through manufacturing process. It's not for raw products like cocoa, cashew nut, ginger, sesame seeds, Arabic. No, it's for manufactured products that goes through different kind of process. So you need to give an analysis of your good manufacturing process, your ACAP, and every other thing. So that's for certificate. It's not for all commodities. Can we leave the freight forwarder to completely undo the whole process of documentation and clearance for a newbie? Don't try it. Please don't try that. It's a big problem, and we mentioned it in the slides that that's one of overly dependent on the freight forwarders. It's not right. Note that a lot of freight forwarders in Nigeria, they specialize in import. There's more money in import than in export. In export, there is no duty, so they don't have to. There's no over invoicing. There's no under invoicing. There's no variation. So you're free. But in import, there is duty, so there's opportunity for them to make money. But in export, very little amount of money. So a lot of them concentrate on the import, and very few of them have knowledge on the export. So if you depend on them, you also be depending on them when they make mistakes and make you lose your money. you can understand that process. You can do it yourself. That's the way to go. Good day, sir. I'm an intending exporter. Do I need to join any chambers of commerce? It's very important that you join the chambers of commerce, either your state chambers. State chambers help you in the area of information. They help you also in the area of access to market. The chambers in Nigeria, they are part and parcel of international chambers of commerce. So, and international chambers of commerce outside Nigeria, they are very effective and strong in business operations. So if an importer is looking for something in Nigeria, he's going to go through the chambers, and the chambers is going to get in touch with the Nigerian chambers, and the Nigerian chambers is going to get with his members that are in that sector. So it is very key that you be part of the chambers. Do we need all these documents for a mini exportation? Like I said, mostly when you're doing, there are basic documents that you need to get, particularly when you're engaging in export by air, because the cargoes are not huge and they are light, but you need to get the documents that is being required from the country of import. You need to get the documents that are being required by the Nigerian government under the Nigerian Export Supervision Scheme. And when you get all these documents, then you can export. But for example, we know that most of the export that take place in the port, at the airport, many people don't procure the CCI, the Clean Certificate of Inspection from the federal government appointed inspection agency. They just make them export like that. So, but you need to get the basic documents that are required. So please, do we have check system for SMEs to minimize this problem? I think that's what we need to do, like a check system and check analysis, so that they'll be able to understand the documents, the problems, and where you can get it. So I think there's a need to put that in place. And no PDI will be looking at something along that line. If I don't export full, Councilor Olabi, if I don't export full container, do I need all these documents? For a formal export, you need all these documents. For a formal export, you need all these documents. Please note, if you look at the diagram I gave to you, it's not all that you need to get. There are some that are related to a particular industry or type of shipment. There are some that are not related. So it's not as bogus as you think. I want you to take time out to go through the documents and see the one that is related to your mode of export, and then you know how to get it. Is there a way to know fake and original? If you don't know the original, then it's becoming very difficult for you to know the fake. So the first thing is for you to know the original. And how do you know the original? Go to all these agencies and meet with them and find out and look at a copy from them, and they will give it to you. From there, you know the original, so that when you see the fake, you can identify the fake. Emeka Adichie, good day. How can one run a sustainable business if they have to be physically involved in the port operations? No. I didn't say that you have to be physically involved. I said you should know. And knowing is just one of. If, for example, you know the process of documentations, NSP, and you know how to obtain your NSP, you know the process for the NSP. The ENSP today now has its own process. You all will agree with me on that. The moment you first of all open the NSP, put in the NSP, attach the relevant documentation to it, put it online. When it goes online, the bank will get back to you with a copy of the NSP. After some time, they process the NSP and they give you an NSP number. Then you get your NSP number. Then the loading takes place. When the loading takes place, then you know that the inspection agency will have to load their loading report on the platform. So you have to follow them to load the loading report on the platform. So once they load the loading report, and the bank will get back to you and tell you how much you have to pay as next fees. Then you get how much you pay, then you pay the money. Now, were you there? No, but you know the process. If you know that all the phytosanitary are obtained at the airport NAQS office, and you go there once, you know that. So if you're working with an agent, you tell him, please go to NAQS airport and get my what? My phytosanitary. I don't want you to go pick up one on the street. So I don't mean that you should take part in all those operations, but you should know and take time out to know the process at a go. That's basically what I'm trying to say. Then what document do I need to export? Charcoal, that has been done. Alvin Amachi Limited is offering services in sesame seed processing with our newly installed visual capacity.
That's marketing.
That's marketing. I get it. Is there a Nasima office in Gombe? There is Nasima office everywhere, but I don't know the address. If you go to nasima.org, then you'll be able to see all the Nasima offices that we have currently. Then for all the documents, does the exporter need to pre-register with this organization before applying for the export permit? No, it doesn't need a pre-registration. For example, now if you're doing a shipment and you need the zoosanitary certificate, the export permit for dairy products like yogurts and everything, you just apply, then attach a copy of the pro forma invoice. Then based on the application and pro forma invoice, some of them might insist they want to carry out an inspection, and some might insist they don't want to carry out, then they'll just give you the certificate. Then when you come to the actual products, to export permit for actual products, all you need to do is to apply. You don't have to be registered with them or be a member before they can process. It's just mere application. Please, which inspection agency did you say will soon take over in the Southwest? They've taken over already. We used to have cobalt inspection services, but now we're having Carminas here. That is there. Jordan Famaladeji, good afternoon, please. How can an exporter of soya beans export the beans in polypropylene bags inside container without it being damaged? Is it refrigerated? Don't try refrigerated products with soya beans. What you need to do, soya beans is already dry, the moisture content is there. What you need to do is just to dress the container. And how do you dress a container? You use craft paper to surround the entire body and get desiccants, moisture remover, about 8 of them in a 40-foot container. Put the 8 inside the container, they will take away all the moisture that can come in on sea. Your failure to do that means that your moisture content will rise if you don't dress the container. What you need to do is to dress the container. And not just dressing the container. Before you load them in the container, make sure you go inside the container yourself, close the door, and check if there are holes, particularly on the door side. A lot of people make the mistake, by the side of the door, there's a rubber. Those rubbers can be weakened sometimes. And when you don't check those rubbers, there's water will come in through them and mess up your cargo. So it is very key for you to know how to dress your container and make sure you check the container very well. All containers in Nigeria are ventilated. So you have to go to the end of those holes and see that the holes have not expanded beyond the normal. If the holes are expanded beyond the normal, you're attracting water into the container. Emmanuel, can we have, or is there government insurance policy for export? Yeah, there's insurance policy for all transactions. For export, you can get a marine insurance for export. But what we're looking at is having an insurance for land export. Currently now, there are no insurance companies that want to insure goods that are leaving by land from Nigeria. So we're looking at working out with some insurance companies to see whether we can get a product that can cover land export. I say, can I share samples, other types of samples of other types of certificate of origin? I can't do that here. If it's a 0 to export class, I used to bring all the certificate of origin so that everybody can see and they can understand and see the difference. There's some certificate of origin that needs to be stamped by customs. There's some certificate of origin that does not need to be stamped by customs. You need to know the difference. The one that has to be stamped, you need to get it stamped. The one that need not to be stamped, you can. There's no problem. You don't have to have it stamped, but it's key for you to know the difference. We have different different types. And then freight forwarders that specialize in exports. Yeah, there are freight forwarders that specialize in export. I specialize in export. Thank you. Where can the certificate of analysis be gotten? You have to do it yourself, and I said earlier, it's for manufactured product. Can this platform assist someone that does not have any money for a full container? Thank you very much. How do I export shea butter? Shea butter can be exported either by sea or by road or by air. If you're exporting shea butter by air, make sure you're putting them in a plastic can. It's either in a plastic can so that they can preserve, or you put them in a carton. And then the most important thing, when you're putting shea butter in a carton, make sure you shrink wrap it. A lot of people export shea butter without shrink wrapping it. Make sure you put it, if it's in a carton, shrink wrap it so that there is no admixture. Nothing comes into the shea butter. It's just small air drops into that shea butter. It will contaminate the shea butter. And if you just put it in a carton and put sellotape and then leave it there, there's no way breeze will take something inside. So it's very key that you put what? Shrink up if you're doing it by carton, or if you're doing by the paint pockets, you know all those paint pockets that already have a seal cover, then you can put it there and seal the cover, and then you can export it. But I think it's cheaper when you go by sea because shea butter is a little bit heavy. If you're exporting shea butter, if you're exporting anything by air to the US, now it's about 1,200 per kg. So if you're doing 100 kg, it's a 2,500 per kg. If you're doing 100 kg, you know how much you're paying. But the cost of freight for a 20-foot container from here to the US is about $1,600. So you need to look at it, just oppose it together and decide on which one you want to go. Good afternoon, madam. Mr. Webb, please, this is yes, my very old man. The clarification I need to make is the exporter don't take advantages in the NAFDAC to facilitate export commodities and to be analyzed before export. I said that the government expects NAFDAC to conduct analysis at almost no cost for finished products if registered in the country. This is almost the same. You only need to factor in the time and the timeline. Thank you. This is an addition from Mr. Naba Justice from NAFDAC. She says that NAFDAC can also facilitate certificate of analysis for companies that are exporting finished products. That a lot of Nigerian exporter does not take advantage of that. So it's very key for exporters to know that aside from you running your own analysis and preparing it, NAFDAC also have the capacity to prepare a certificate for you. Benson Achibi, sir, export to China requires H2000 sheet. Please explain what this means. H2000 sheet is, I don't know what H2000. What particular product? I need to know the product you're talking about. Then this is your H2000 sheet. Maybe it's related to one particular kind of product, or you're talking about HS code. I don't really know what it means. Maybe you can make further clarification and I can understand. I export to China. I've not seen this H2000. I do. With all this documentation, because how can an SM with a small capital cope with this documentation? The documentation seems complex because you do not know. The moment you know, it becomes easier. The moment you're able to abide by the rules and the process, it becomes easier for you to be able to get those documentation. It's what you don't know is what scares you. What you know don't scare you anymore. Say, please, sir, can we contact you? We need the help or your service in favor that. Speak to Madam Titi in regards to decide whether you need to talk to me or not. Is NAFDAC analysis recognized globally compared with the likes of SGS and Peru Veritas? All right, I can talk of NAFDAC analysis. NAFDAC is part of a bigger body. I think they call them Codex or Codex something. They're part of the Codex. So NAFDAC certificate of analysis is recognized. And note that SGS and Peru Veritas certificate of analysis are independent agreement between yourself and the importer. The government analysis still remains the government analysis and can be recognized anywhere. But when it comes to SGS, it's only because the contract stipulates that you need to obtain a certificate of analysis from SGS or Peru Veritas. With all this documentation from the SME, yeah, I believe that. Does this permit relate to individual export? Depending, like I said earlier, if you're doing a light volume transaction by air, you might not really have problems with all this permit because your consignment is low and sometimes below $500. You might not really have this one. But permits are legal regulatory requirements for export. Then we're looking at does this permit and documentation relates to, I think we've done that. Rosemary, does this permit, you asking the same question, individual export or to it once and for all process? We've done that. Rosemary is asking another question. As the receiver of the imported goods, do I also need, somebody says, how accessible is NAFDAC analysis and what is the procedure online? I think you need to go to NAFDAC website. I get import permit from NAFDAC, and when I bring in my desiccants, and I do almost everything online. So if you go online, you see the requirements, even the fees are there. you go online, the fees for it are also there that stipulate the exact fees that you need for you to be able to access the analysis or any other services that you want from NAFDAC. Which is similarly saying again, if NAFDAC knows the requirement of the country of import, the analysis will be based on standards in the importing country. She's making a further contribution in that the standards can be based on that. But let me also make one clarification here. There's what they call product type certificate from Standard Organization of Nigeria. Standard Organization of Nigeria, when it comes to export, and there is no particular standard, prescribed standard, either in Nigeria or in the there's a standard in the country of imports, but Nigeria have not created a standard for it. They issue what they call a product type certificate. So when there is no standards parameters in Nigeria, you can obtain a product type certificate from Standard Organization of Nigeria, and that should suffice. Yeah, shea butter is semi-processed, so they need analysis, and there's a lot of there are some few companies in Lagos that can carry out analysis for you, but some people prefer to go to South Africa and Germany to carry out the analysis, whether it's organic or non-organic or otherwise. As the receiver of imported goods, do I also need some of these permits to document? We're talking about export here now, but when you're importing goods from abroad, you also need to get permit, particularly if you're importing under the food and drug. If you're importing under food and drug products, you need to get the permit, import permit. If you're bringing chemicals, you need to get import permit from NAFDAC. If you're bringing in goods from abroad, you need to get some cap from Standard Organization of Nigeria. The importer has to process it from there and get a some cap. So permits is also available in the area of import. And lastly, as a receiver of imported goods, do I also need some of these permits? This is for export. So on import also you need permit. Can red palm oil be exported by air? When you export, because of the nature of because red palm oil is liquid, so most airlines only like to pick up palm oil because once there is a spill, it will affect other products. So they only want to pick it up, and when they want to pick it up, or where they decide they want to label it as dangerous cargo. And when they label it dangerous cargo, it means the fees will be higher than what is obtainable for other standard products. I don't have a good understanding of the process, and I don't want to depend on freight forwarders. So just can your contact be given to me? Madam Titi will be able to give you information on that. I think there are no open questions right now, unless you want to take questions in line.
All right. Mr. Kalawe, thank you so much for taking those questions. There are a few other questions that were not dropped in the Q&A box. And we have those that are following us on Facebook Live. And there's Yombo Agbola. He asked a question. He said, do medicinal products for export require certification? Kindly highlight the necessary documentation. Do medicinal products for export require certification? And wanted to highlight the necessary documentation.
Yes, medical products requires they need a permit. Like I said, NAFDAC, for you to export any goods under the food and drug, you need a permit from NAFDAC. So you have to process your export permit from NAFDAC. That is very key. Your export permit must be processed from NAFDAC. Then you also need to have your certificate of analysis. Apart from every other documentation, invoice or packing list, you need to have your certificate of analysis to give an analysis of the products that you are exporting. That is also extremely very key. More importantly, that you need to know when you're exporting pharmaceutical products. Let me put it like that. When you're exporting pharmaceutical products, you don't go by land. The law does not permit pharmaceutical products to go by land. So it's either by air or by sea. You don't go by land exporting pharmaceutical products. If you export pharmaceutical by land, the goods will be contravened, will be seized in the country of import.
All right, thank you for that. And there are some other questions that were dropped in the chat box I felt we could answer because we have a few more minutes. I'm not sure if you've answered this, but this person said, can an enterprise business export? I mean, a business that is not a limited liability company. I really don't understand why they take on an enterprise business
I know
export.
that's the requirement of the Nigerian Export Promotion Council, not the requirement of the law of the country. Nigeria Export Promotion Council simply say because an enterprise can do business in Nigeria, can open an account and do everything legally. Currently now they are supposed to have a TIN number too. Once you register an enterprise, you have a TIN number. So, but the Nigerian Export Promotion Council has this law that exempt enterprise from obtaining the certificate of export certificate. It's a big discussion if we have to go into that. The reason and the motive for exempting them. Some people say because of the legal entity. And the legal entity also means that an enterprise can be sued. A company can be sued, an enterprise also can be sued. Even the individual in the enterprise, it's better to sue an individual than sue a company that is a legal entity on its own. So I can sue TTO Joe trading under the name and style of TTO Joe Enterprises. So I'm only not suing TTO Joe, but I'm suing the person there. So that's some issues some people have been raising why they exempt them. But I still really don't look at it. But the ease of doing business, we didn't know the one that is coming up now, that enterprise is being considered as anything. Maybe NPC will have a review of that in that area.
Okay, thank you for that. A second question is, where can we get AGOA certificates before we export? There's a question like that. Do you answer that?
Yeah. There's the African Growth Opportunity Act is over 6,000 products that are under the act that are allowed, permitted to be exported into US without under preference. And there's no clear-cut certificate that you have a AGOA certificate. No. That I have to have an AGOA certificate for me to be able to export. No. What you do is that you follow the process of export under the AGOA. So once you follow the process of export under the AGOA, then you're okay. One of the process is that they have their own customs, which is part of our Nigerian custom, that they have been trained under the AGOA. Aside from the customs you see, the regular customs you see in the port, they have their own certificate of origin that must be endorsed. Apart from the normal international NACIMA certificate of origin that we are used to. So once you go under the process and you submit the document under the process, your HS code are rightly computed, then you're free to go. You don't need a certificate to say I'm an AGOA company and I have a certificate to be exporting under AGOA. No.
Oh, okay, that's great. I think I'll take two more questions and then we can round up. There's a question here that says, hello sir, I'm into design and production of leather goods and other material handmade goods like bags for various purposes. And this person, I think, is for various purposes like aprons, etc. I'd like to know what the requirement for exporting bags abroad to other African countries and possibly Canada, US, Asia, Arabia. Now, there's a long list, but maybe you can give me.
Yeah, they are basically bags. They fall under finished product export.
Yeah.
They fall under finished product export. So it's the standard export procedure that they have to follow, and the export documentation that they also have to follow, because they are normal bags. They are not artifacts. They are not handicrafts. They are process. The bags that were manufactured, handbags, designer bags, and stuff like that. So it has to follow the same export process, except the country of import is putting an additional requirement on the exporter to say, I need evidence of this, and that's where you need to get all those documents from. But from the Nigerian side, you're free to export under the same export procedure as contained in the Nigerian Export Supervision Scheme.
All right. So the last question I'm going to raise is from a member of the panel, and he has asked about the multiplicity of payments for a single service. So the question, let me rephrase the question. The question is that it's showing concern about multiple charges for almost the same thing. What can you say about that? Because these are some of the issues that our MSME exporters complain about. And maybe
multiple charges for the same in export.
Yes, for the same service, like regulators, duplicity of payments.
Yeah. Where you talking about multiple payments, multiple charges? It means different agencies are coming up with their different charges. Yeah, it's a big issue and it's adding more cost to our export. Like I explained earlier, NAQS does certificate for phytosanitary certificate for fumigation. FPIS also do the same thing. So that means I have to pay NAQS certain amount of money. Then I have to pay also, I have to pay FPIS certain amount of money. But take away all these agencies. Export is not like the inspection from the federal government appointed is free. It's not totally free because you're paying 0.5% of the next fee. So they are taking their fees from that. So you start your payment from that. Then you go to FPIS, you make payments to FPIS. You go to NAQS, you make payments to NAQS. You go to the Chambers of Commerce to get a certificate of origin. You make payments to Chambers of Commerce for the certificate of origin. You go to them again. If you want a certified invoice, you make payment to get a certified invoice. Then the shipping line too, all of them are just talking about payments. So there's a need, that's why we say there's a need to harmonize all these operations and have them in one single window. So that once there's a single window, because it makes it easier for us to be able to export. Export naturally is duty free, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of payments that we pay to different agencies before we can even carry out one single export.
I will see this as a point of advocacy, if possible, that
it's very key.
Business exporters can look at.
Yeah, it's very key for exporters to be able to have at least even have it identified. Like for example, there's no way you see amount that any case is going to charge. There's no way you see the amount. API has their own. It's 150 naira per ton for fumigation services. But let us have a single window where we can see all these fees, even if they're going to be fees. But let us have a single window where we can see all these fees and know, and then we'll be able to make advocacy on or against it as it is.
Right. Thank you very much. I saw one last question, which I think might be good to answer. The person said, are you saying products under mining need certificate of analysis?
Yes, please. Are you saying products under mining need certificate of analysis? Yes, mining products need certificate of analysis. Oh, a lot. Mining is like manufactured products too. They need certificate of analysis. What I said earlier is that for you to export any mine products, you have to get a Form J from the export from the cadastral office, and the mining need a certificate of analysis. If you look at the stone, if you look at the clear cut stone, magnesium in the stone, they have so many elements inside that stone. You can get silver, you can get gold, you can get different mixed up content. So you need to know what percentage of this one is columbite, what percentage of this one is tin, what percentage is lead, what percentage. So mining requires a certificate of analysis, and that you can do in the Nigerian NMC, Mining Corporation in Jos, and we have one other one in somewhere in Oshodi. Yeah. Oluwadare Talabi said those sesame seed need analysis from NAFDAC, though NAFDAC is food and drug. NAFDAC is basically food and drug. Can you give countries where enterprises are legally recognized as to be exporter? Francophone countries are like that. Francophone countries are like that. They have two types of registration in Francophone countries. When you register, which is the beauty of the Francophone countries, when you register a company under their chambers of commerce, and you register like we register a limited liability company, which is their one is ours is LTD, there is SARL. The beauty of that SARL is that you can operate within the entire Francophone countries. That you don't need another multiple, you don't need to register another company in Togo or register another company in Burkina Faso. You can use that same company to do that one. But they have the enterprise, and the enterprise company should do export. I'm not seeing any other questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Kolawe, for this. Right. Thank you so much for this beautiful session. We really do appreciate this. From our heart to yours, we want to say a big thank you. You've done justice to this topic, and you've been speaking for almost 2 hours without a break, without drinking water. I'm not sure whether you're drinking water. And I want to assume that most of the participants also have enjoyed your session. So thank you very much. I will give thank you so much. And for the participants, this export capacity building series was brought to you by the Trade Policy Workstream of the Policy Development Facility Program of UKAID. And it's a series, it's a 4-part series This is the second in the series, which is export documentation. The next edition we hold in another fortnight, and for that we'll be talking about raising finance for export. That will be on the 16th of September, 2020. And a fortnight right after that as well, we'll have the last session, which will be on branding and packaging for export. That will be on the 30th of September. I need to announce also that for as many that has joined this Zoom webinar with the link, the same link would hold for the others. So the same link you use for today is what you use for the 16th and the 30th. So keep it very close by. On the 16th, click on it and you shall be right in this room again. And please also follow us on pdfnigeria.org. Most of our recordings are uploaded there. PDF Nigeria is our website where we upload all the resources from our engagement in PDF and from Policy Development Facility Program till date. The resources, by the resources, I mean the videos. So if you missed the first one, go to pdfnigeria.org/resources. You will find the first video. Once this is also sorted, we will upload it on that same page on our website. Somebody talked about having a dummy document, like a how-to guide. The PDF had created a how-to guide last year. So if you also go on the PDF Nigeria, under the resources page, just look for how-to guide for export. You'll find something that would be useful for you. We review it from time to time, but the last version, which was reviewed, I think early this year actually, February thereabouts, is on that website. So you might find that very, very interesting and very useful. And I must also thank Mrs. Onobajo that joined us from NAFDAC.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
I really must thank you.
Our great sister.
She always participates in PDF events, even in the physical events. She's always present, and she's really been a support for this program. Thank you, Ma, for being part of this. I would like to also introduce to all the participants an association, a network of practicing non-oil exporters. We call them the Network of Practicing Non-Oil Exporters of Nigeria. It was an initiative that was birthed also from the PDF program. And so as many as are here that really desire to export or be in a community where exporters are and can help you and hold you, mentor you, then I would request that you subscribe to be a member of the Network of Practicing Non-Oil Exporters of Nigeria. The acronym is NPNEN. NPNEN. And the website, I would advise that you visit the website right after this is over, www.mpnen.org. Please go to the website, mpnen.org, to read more about MPNEN and probably download a registration form, fill it, and just email it or fill online. You will see a link to that. You might also want to send an email to info@mpnen.org, and we'll follow that up from our own end. We'll follow you up from that end, info@mpnen.org. Please take note of this and, of course, take action as soon as this training is over. I think one last announcement will be that as you have enjoyed the session so far, some were around in the first edition, some are around now. Please share the link widely with your friends. Bring them in for the third one. I don't think it's too late to join. Next week, we'll be talking about raising finance for export, which is a very, very critical thing, critical issue when it comes to MSMEs engaging in export. So it's something that you need to be part of. Please don't miss it. 16th of September, same time, 11 to 1. Now, before you leave, we want you to fill our poll. The host, please, can you launch the poll? We have a poll. The poll is to get your feedback on how you have enjoyed this session. Nana, are you there? Please don't go before you fill this poll. Don't go until you fill this poll. Nana, please, can you launch the poll? Let me see if I can launch it from here. Okay. Can you see the poll? Okay, if you can, please, can we just answer these questions very quickly? Can we answer these questions very quickly? Nobody has ticked the answers. Can you launch this? Can you please participate in this poll very quickly? We're waiting. There's a poll on your screen. I want to believe that you can see it. If you cannot see a poll on your screen, do let me know. so we can relaunch it. But you can see a poll on your screen. Someone said they can, okay. So okay. I've started seeing those that can vote. All right. Please, can we vote? Can we vote for this? I only have 1% voted. And we need to move very fast because this poll will time out. So do this very quickly. Okay, I can see that I can see the poll. While you're at it, I'm repeating some websites again for some of us as we're filling this poll. I'm repeating some websites to get resources, PDF resources from this program. Visit pdfnigeria.org/resources. You find videos, you find the how-to guides, and several other policy briefs that the Policy Development Facility has developed in the course of its program year. There are lots of studies we have also done since 2016 till date. They are on that website. So it's a rich repository, if I can tell you that, okay? So go to pdfnigeria.org/resources and you find all the resources you might need post this event. Also, I talked about the network of practicing non-oil exporters of Nigeria, and I encouraged you to join. I think it's a good decision if you do. And the website is mpnen.org, mpnen.org. And on that, you can go to register. I guess the registration is from login. If you click login, it will direct you if you're not a member, and you can register. On the interim as well, you might want to send an email to info@npnen.org if you have any inquiries on that. Please take this opportunity, take this advantage. It's a good one. In our last class as well, several people had asked for this. Several asked, where can they find a system where they can belong to immediately and they can be handheld to export? It's good news as well that we're working on a mentorship program, which will be championed as well by MPNEM, we call them. So if you belong in that kind of system, you will be well taken care of in terms of getting you to export, being in an ecosystem that cares that you do export. Please take advantage of this. If you have not filled the poll, we only have just about 75% voted. Can we have the other 25% in the room voting? Let's do this quickly. We are now at 76%. We're waiting. We're waiting. Now we have 78%. We have just about 1 more minute to do this. If you're in the room and you have not voted, please do that in less than 60 seconds, please. Please fill the poll. We're waiting. This is important because it helps us to know how to serve you better next time. All right? We have 85% that have voted already. 85% voted. Can we move this to about 90%? 87%. Right, let's move this. We're at 93%. We're doing well. Great, 96%. We're almost done. That's great, 96%. So while we wait for the other 4% to vote, I bring this meeting to a close officially, and we look forward to seeing you on, thank you, 100%. Yes, we're right on track. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We hope to see you again on the 16th and on the 30th of September. Thank you so much for being part of this. Go to visit our website, pdfnigeria.org, resources to get a lot of resources really in this space, in the trade space. PDF has done a lot of work and it's on that site. And also visit www.npnen.org. Thank you very much. And this is wishing you a very beautiful afternoon. Thank you very much. Please, you can leave the meeting when you are, at least we're done now, so you can leave the meeting. Thank you very much.